I was born on 401 East 3rd in the old Victoria Hospital. I'm born under the hill. You know what under the hill is? Well, I was born there and raised there. I went to St. Joe, and I worked about a year with the modern cleaners down there. And then they opened up out there, and they paid a salary. You starved to death in town. $12 a week, man. That was back in, I graduated in 40. I worked for $12 a week, 6 days a week. I got there at 7, and when I finished up in the evening, why, it could be 6 o'clock, could be 7, you know. I learned the dry cleaning business real quick. So I said, well, I'm not going to get into the Army. That just didn't, you know, I watching everything out there, and I said, I got to fly. So I went over and took my exam, which is comical because have you ever seen a colorblind test? With one other fellow taking the test with me, and the sergeant would, what do you see? I said 23. This guy said 47. After a while, it got to where I said, oh hell, one of us is wrong. And when he closed, suddenly he just closed that big book up and he said, look at the other fellow and said, you can go home. So that's how I made it into it. Physically, I made it in to the Air Force cadets, and I was called in to San Antonio, then we went from there to California. And all the people from California went to Texas. I never have figured out how they placed us or sent us in the service, you know. I didn't ask in those days, we just went. And I found out the Pacific water was cold. Man, they had a big pier built. It was as high as the sides of a ship. And so you had to jump off of that into the water and swim around the pier. So, well, I said, I can swim. Oh, I wish I'd have kept my mouth shut. I swam around all right. And then went over to Thunderbird Field in Arizona. That's started training, you know. Some of the boys got trained by Ryan, R-Y-A-N. They were single wing, but we were there to double wing. And this instructor turned it over upside down when we were flying, and my feet hit me in the face. The belt was keeping me, and I looked down. How in the hell am I going to learn to keep my feet on the pedals? That worried me for damn near a week, you know, because when you're flying normally, there's no problem. But when you're upside down, you do that. Anyhow, it just all came to me, you know. And I left there, went to twin engine training in Pecos, Texas. Now, man, that is, during the war, that's a desolate place out there. We left there and went to south of Denver. We got there at night, and one of the fellows that, you know, one of the students who was like me, come by our barracks, and he walked in, he said, fellas, we got a problem. I said, what's that? Ain't nothing but B-25s down there. We were an experimental class. They took us from sort of basic training suddenly right to the big airplanes, you know. So I learned to fly B-25. We lost a couple there one night, just right in the front of me, man. he crashed that thing just on takeoff. And I was putting the power to her, and I saw it flash way out there in the front of me. And we had one, seemed like I had a crash everywhere I went, you know. And then when I graduated in B-25, and the B-25 they came out with the new one with 8 50 calibers and all the machinery in the back of 2 or 3 double machine guns in the back, and in the front they had a 75 millimeter cannon. You know, there's a hell of a recoil on cannons, you know. And when they were trying, the news got out to us when they first decided to put that cannon in the front. They didn't have any hydraulics to catch the back recoil. And they fired that thing and it went right through the back of the airplane. Well, finally they got a hydraulic deal that worked. I never did fire one because when they took it to the training, they took all those guns and stuff out of it, you know. But we was going to shoot the Japs up. Well, so when I got my letter at graduation, you know, man, I got the bars, you know. We all was out in the front of the place. And there was a English fighter pilot, Ace. He talked to us there, and you know, telling us about the war over there a little bit and so forth. And he was in a P-45, it was a later fighter plane, you know, we had. And he'd come over here, and he'd fly around to the air bases to boost our morale, you know. And so when we was out in front of there, he came over us, fella. He had about 300 miles an hour upside down again. And so about 4 or 5 months later, the Air Force had a magazine they'd come out with, you know. He crashed that thing, killed him. There's an old story about it. There's old pilots and there's bold pilots, but there ain't no old bold pilots. That was the cockiest bunch I ever was with, because man, here we are students, and we go someplace somewhere, and the guy said, "Where's the officer?" "There's no officer." You know, we'd land and get gas or something, you know. And so we were going to go. You see, about that time is when we began to get after the Japs, and we had all Chinese pilots, a group there. You know, they were very. When we walked down the aisle in the building, they'd go up against the wall. We were training them, of course, but boy, them boys, they looked on us that we were gods, you know. We finally graduated, and I opened the envelope up, Austin, Texas. What the hell, I'm going to go in Austin? We got there that night and walked down to the flight line, nothing but C-47s. We got a troop carrier. They transferred me to troop carrier. Okay, I learned to fly that plane. And you remember the Battle of the Bulge? Now, I missed that by my name being an H. At the air base there, one day after everybody was trained, we was kind of sitting around, you know. And the word came out, immediately all flight officers would report. a theater. So we was all in there raising hell, talking and all that. Colonel come in, you know, everybody shut up, you know. We stood up and he said, now, if we don't call your name, you get the hell out of here. They started with the A's, they went down to the G's, skipped the H's down to the M's, and finished up. So we left. And a few minutes later, after I got back to the barracks, here come Mr. Goodwin. Name was Goodwin, and he was my roommate. He reached out and got that B4 bag. They issued them to us, you know. And so he grabbed that down and opened up the drawer and getting underwear. I said, where in the hell are you going? He said, to Europe. And you know, the Battle of the Bulge, they shot the hell out of him. He came back and I met him just about the time the war was over. I was getting ready, I'd been already trained. I was going to be on the invasion of Japan. I had C-46, that was a big transport in its time. Still some of them flying. And I had a crew and I had a co-pilot. And in that C-46 comical, the little place where you go down and you crank the motor up, get electricity to start your plane. And we were waiting to go to POE, Port of Embarkation. And Harry's, the biggest, greatest man I know in the service during World War II was Harry Truman. You know, he says, drop that bomb. And that ended most everything. So I was surplus. I come home, got a job, CP&L, and stayed in the reserve. And after a couple of years with the Allstate, why, I get a letter one day. I was going to go to work at DuPont. They were asking for me to come out there and fly, and I said, okay, I will. And I got this letter. It says, greetings, come back. So I went there, and then I flew one to the other bases, you know. And they were going to make a fighter pilot out of me. And I sat there and cried. I said, I don't want to be a fighter pilot. I don't know beans about them damn. They had 45s there, the latest fighters, you know. They were training. It was a training base for fighter pilots. I finally got it. So they sent me back to twin engine to Ellington Field in Houston. So I was there for a while, and I trained, we flew navigators. Have you ever seen the bomber that they built to go to Russia? It was twin engine, most beautiful airplane you ever saw. A bomber. There was a pilot and a co-pilot. We were trained, there was people, colonels and majors and captains, all pilots. But if you're going to go into that bomber, you had to be trained to be a pilot, co-pilot, a radio man. He was the navigator. We called them four-headed monsters. And I flew those guys in all over the United States training, you know. The cutest thing that ever happened, you know, up in Missouri during the war, or even the Korean War, man, you could, after you left that road that comes south of St. Louis, through Malden, Missouri, that's where we were. You go west, man, there wasn't a light anywhere. That was wild country during World War II. And so we went there, and they transferred all us pilots there to different bases, and they left me off of orders. So I went around for almost a month with a 45 on my side, and I had a 1940 model Ford. I was the aerodrome officer. I had to make sure that the field was clear, and someone was in the tower, and I had that duties to do. I did that for about a month and a half. But boy, I want to tell y'all what, that part of the United States was old-fashioned when we were up there in Malden, Missouri. If you've seen the buildings in a cowboy show, that's where some of them were. They decided, you see, in flying parachute people, if you got high, you got your butt shot off. And we were trained to put the parachute, sit it on the chair, because it would stop the regular bullets, from the rifles. So I didn't train them. They had their own trainer, how to jump, and he sat there back there at that light, and, where I'd flip a light, a red light back at the door, for them to go out of where we wanted to be. I'd flip that light, and they all get up and make sure that the parachute, and off they go, Training, of course. I never had to jump. I had the parachute on 2 or 3 times on a single engine, airplane gave us trouble. And I put the parachute on, and during his training, they had a field where we drop them, and day and night. They were experimenting with 4,000 feet, a low drop, Oh, I flew so much treetop, man, you wouldn't believe. We used to take the little wore-out C-47s to California. They put on new engine, new propellers, everything, re-equip it. When we go out and pick them up, they were just almost like new. And I was going out there and on the junkers, we had to borrow an engine from Southwest Airlines at that now. It used to be after it was named when we started out, But them old airplanes, man, they wear out just like anything else, And before I left, they got brand new middle-sized airliners to fly to fly up at Ellington. Oh man, everything in there was automatic. If you wanted to go somewhere, you just sat in the quadrants. Your things. If you wanted to go to California, you set the number in there and flip that switch. The wind would it'd just fly right to where you wanted to go. Man, it was honey. Had a lot of power too. Had 250 horsepower, and it was a great airplane. I think if they'd have offered me stay in the Air Force and let me fly that the rest of my life, I would have went. Because I just like driving a Cadillac, It had everything on it. Everything was automatic. 250 horsepower per engine. And when you take off, you throw a switch, and had water injection, and that added 200 horsepower to each engine. The C-47 was kind to pilots. You could fly it and take it off on one engine. That's hard to believe, isn't it? I can tell you, I like the piston in my pants the first time. The instructor, we took off from Austin Air Force, the commercial base, and hell, we weren't over 50 feet high, and he cut that engine off. And he says, single engine. I pushed that other engine up, he just kept going. But that was, you know, with lots of airplanes. Now, my neighbor here, he's dead now. He flew B-26s. That was what they used to call a widowmaker. That son of a bitch. It had big engine on it, and it was wild fly. So he flew that thing. He was in the raids over there, you know, and when I stayed in transports the whole time, you know, in cargo. When we first got out and we went down there to fly the C-47, there was probably about 20 of us. And then when we finished up there, like I said, they went down to the H's, and all the H's, and felt there was about 20 or 25. They made instructors out of us and sent us to Missouri, Malden, Missouri. You couldn't raise hell in that town if you tried. But the next town down, there was a honky-tonk in between these two towns, 20 miles apart. You've heard the word give them a buzz with the airplane? Well, I got picked for night flight my two buddies had a party. They went down there, and I knew they were there. I come over, damn, that thing shook that damn building. I said, hey, did y'all have a good time? He said, God damn you. Well, we had a lot of good times. We look back on them, and I flew into a flock of ducks one day. Now, I want to tell you what, that is something, man. I ducked below, you know, and some bitches, they put their wings down and up they went. They're flying south, you know. But I enjoyed we had pretty good time, but they didn't have any. If they wanted you to fly Sunday afternoon, you flew Sunday afternoon. That's the military, you know. And I like to make the long trips. I volunteered to any long trips they wanted to go somewhere and pick up stuff, and I volunteered for it. And when I was in Ellington, and I enjoyed that. I had about 4 years in World War II, and then I got out and I got 2 or 3 years Korean War, and then I stayed in the reserve and finished up and got my retirement. But and the old man promised me during the war, I come home and he told me, he says, Vic, he says, our son doesn't want this business. I'll sell you half of it. And so, hell, it was good business. But during the time I was in the service, you know, finished up, things went wild with him and family, and she died. And I didn't get my cleaning shop, so I had talked to Allstate, you know. So I went with them, and I put 43 years in with them, and that's it. But I was real lucky. Just like I said, I ain't figured out how they went down to the H's and stopped, and they made instructors out of us. That is kind of weird, but can't beat it. The truth of the matter is, I guess I might say I enjoyed my trip.